Great. Well, I just want to say welcome to our drop-in discussion this afternoon as part of the European Leaders Learning Community. Whether you're watching live with us or whether you're joining us in the future, we just really pray that this is a fruitful discussion and just as helpful for what you're thinking about and the places that you're serving as leaders. My name is Clare Mulrooney, and I'm the host this afternoon, and I'm joined here with three great people, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves so you can just get to know them a little bit before we begin our discussion on our topic this month, which is around leadership pitfalls, and this month's one is talking around the topic of power. And so we've all read and watched the different resources on the website, and we're going to have fun and fruitful discussion together around this topic. So maybe Damares, if you want to go first, followed by Rob and then Steve, just introduce yourselves and let us know a little bit about you.
Great. Hello, nice to be here. It's a pleasure. My name is Damares. I am Brazilian, as you probably can hear in my accent. I've been in YWAM for 30 years actually now. I've been in Brazil, in Africa, and here now in England for 15 years, and I am one of the campus leaders here in YWAM Harpenden.
Brilliant, thank you. Rob?
My turn. So I'm going to say a little bit of difference about me. When I left school at 16, I had no qualifications, and I started my own gardening business at 16. And I think it's some of those things that I've learned the most. And I think that we bring our experience in. And no matter what experience we have, we bring those things with us. And I think as we're talking about the subject today, I think I bring my experience, not unnecessarily my learning with me. And from that point, I became a Christian at 18. And I always wanted to share my faith because I didn't come from a Christian background. And I went to this Christian camp, and this person talking on missions, and she had been in Indonesia and everywhere. And I thought, I would love to do that, but I can't do that. And I didn't stand when there was a missionary call. But then she said, can you go back to where you are and can you share your faith where you are? Because it starts where you are. And I did that. I went and worked with Youth for Christ. On the streets, meeting young people, and really that is where I probably learnt a lot, and that is my experience, and that's what led me into YWAM when I was 25. And I did my DTS at Homestead Manor in England. I led lots of DTSs there. I then went for some time, 2 years in YWAM Denmark for a bit, and then I did a lot of things in Albania before coming to the Midlands in England and leading the work here in Derby.
Brilliant, thank you.
I can say more, but you'd probably tell me off.
Rob, I would never tell you off. I don't know what you're talking about. And finally, we have Steve.
Yeah, hi. My name is Steve Johnson, and I'm American. I come from Texas. And I've been in YWAM for 30 years now. My wife and I did our DTS in '91 in Amsterdam and got some training there and moved to Budapest in '94. So we've been here for 27 years now.
Wow.
And we have 5 children whom we've raised. They've been born and raised here on the mission field. The last one, Rachel, is 18. She just graduated from high school. So we're about to be empty nesters. But I'm serving now as the base leader for YWAM Budapest. And I'm also part of the ACT for Central Europe, and I'm serving on the core circle with that team.
Brilliant. Thank you. Wow, I'm sat here in awe of all three of you. So much experience, and it's going to be exciting to have this discussion with you this afternoon. If you are joining us, you can feel free to pop questions in the comments, and we will try to read those and answer them as we go. But yeah, let's get stuck in. So I'm going to start by just asking, I'm going to pick one of you. Maybe I'll go with Damares, ladies first and all that. Damares, from your reading this month and watching the videos, is there something that really struck you, or a thought that stuck with you? You just kick off our discussion with what's something that...
I think that is few things that I took notes, but I think one of the things that was from the first video, I forgot her name. She mentioned something that Jordan Peterson said in his book of 12 Rules of Life, when he said the voice of community is required for the integrity of the individual. And for me, I was thinking a lot about YWAM when we talk about this multicultural environment that we all live. And so to be able to hear the voice of the community, and it's such a challenge because the voice will be expressed in so many different ways depending on where you come from. And then I think for me, that is something that I've been thinking a lot when I was, and then even after when I was hearing the other videos and reading the articles also, how can we, manage this whole aspect of power in such a multicultural environment that we most of the time we live within YWAM. I think this is one of the things that I've been thinking when I was reading and listening to the videos.
Yeah, it's good. You touched on something really interesting, I think, right from the get-go there. I can't remember exactly which piece it was, but it talked about even how there's power present in every relationship, in every setting that we're in, and a play of power, sometimes an imbalance of power. And I think cultures is an interesting one in that, isn't it? Because we all bring our cultural worldview to our leadership in some dynamic, and how that outplays culturally into this area of power. I don't know if either of you, Rob or Steve, have thoughts on that or experience in that, when it's gone wrong or it's gone well.
Specifically, you mean like the cultural aspect of, or is that what the question is?
Yeah, I think just around how does culture play into the power that's present in every relationship, and how you healthily work that out.
I mean, one thing that was mentioned in Alice Byberg's video, she mentioned that power is neutral, but it can be used negatively or positively, so we don't need to look at it as a bad thing necessarily. And but I've noticed too, and just in experience, just seeing how cultural differences bring different expectations, depending on what you're brought up in, and what in the way levels of authority work, the way society works, the way the different hierarchies work. Even if you have a job, what your role is compared to your employer. And sometimes people are very uncomfortable. They don't know how to act when, as a leader, you're trying to condescend to their level and really share the idea, share the decision, share the authority, share the power. But I've seen, by and large, I think many cultures that maybe come from hierarchical structures, especially that's prevalent within Central and Eastern Europe, they like YWAM. That's one reason that they're attracted to YWAM, because they think, wow, this isn't how it was when I was growing up. This isn't what was modeled for me. And so they very quickly are able to adapt because there's something so appealing there. And so it's fun to see. And I've seen people from many nations and work with people from many backgrounds who are comfortable now, I think, and know how to operate in a system where there's not a top-down style of leadership. And I think they enjoy that, and that's been a healthy thing.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I would say, it's more the interpretation of what is power and how this power, because when you say power, it's neutral. Yes, can be positive and can be negative, but the perception of power also can really differentiate from country to country. And for me personally, one of the things I had to learn here is I come from a culture where silence is used as a way to protest. Silence is not, and here I realized that in some of the environments I've been, silence actually was a way to agree. People were understood as an agreement, not as a protest. So silence actually was a way that for me that I was trying to use or to give an understanding of some kind of my power depending on my position, but it was completely misinterpreting, because actually where I come from was a protest and here was an agreement. So I think this whole understanding of being neutral, but I think also an understanding, that actually what can be understood, or even what can be understood as hierarchical, as you said, can be different also depending on where you are. And so that's my experience living in different countries and different continents also.
Yeah.
It's interesting how even different body language can contribute to that and affect people's perception of what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I found with different cultures, sometimes you think you've got an agreement and you think we're all moving ahead, and then it's in the small things. And it's the small things where we find out we are not talking the same language here. We think we've communicated, we think we've all agreed, and we're agreed on a course of action, and I felt we've communicated well. But as we're moving on, suddenly you realise some people are seeing that decision in a very different way to other people. And I think that's where we've got to recommunicate and ask, what did you understand by that decision, and what did you see? Or for a lot of people, they're polite, they will nod, they will say yes, but they're not really agreeing with you. And it's like, I get a lot of nodding and I think, no, do we really, oh yes. And that is not what we but when it comes down to it, we're not moving very far at all, because the understanding isn't there. And I think that we're often not, it's sometimes, again, it's not what is said, it's what's not said. And I think sometimes
absolutely,
when we said about body language, we're looking around the room, seeing how people, that person's nodding very in agreement, but go and talk about what was said afterwards to make sure they weren't just being polite to you. And that they really do understand the decision. And people who may look very disinterested may completely understand what's going on and be in agreement. They just don't like a lot of yak and chat about it.
Yeah. Actually, nodding to me, when I nod, what I'm saying is that I'm hearing you, not necessarily I'm agreeing with you. That's the other aspect, that has been some misunderstanding. People have been like, but you were nodding. And say, yeah, I was nodding, saying that I could hear you, but not necessarily I was in agreement with you, because I would never say this while you were talking, because that would be rude. So then by nodding, I'm just letting you know that I can hear you.
You can get a lot of trouble doing things like that, Damares. I was in the States once. Well, I was in the States in Pennsylvania once, and I got taken to, and there was a lot of Amish people. I got taken to this farm show, and they were selling this prize pig, and everybody went, yeah. And I went like that and nodded, and they said, "Don't do that. You just bought the prize pig." So don't nod in the wrong place, so you end up with the prize pig, Damares.
Yeah, so see, that's it. But I think that is the thing why that's when I saw this statement, for me was like listening to the group and to the community when you are in a multicultural. I think that has to be lots of conversation, because people will speak in different ways, will be in silence, they will bring, as someone said, they will bring their expression in their body, and yes means not does not mean yes, and no does not mean no. And then how we can really understand how power will play in this process, that's when we need the Holy Spirit actually to help us in this process.
Yeah, so good. I was thinking it makes me think about, I think one of the articles said actually about how you know, there are sometimes natural ways that a power balance works, not negatively, not positively, but it's just because you are the leader and you have a team, or, you know, I'm a parent and my children, or whatever the relationship is, sometimes there's just a natural unspoken like slight balance one way or the other. And I think that's a really important thing to be aware of, isn't it? When you lead a group, especially a multicultural group, is being aware of the natural kind of power outplays in relationships and roles. And I mean, I think probably say that from my experience, it feels like, oh, as a leader, I almost have to go out of my way if I'm in the position that would be seen to be more powerful, to go out of my way to double ask the question, to go and double listen to what someone said, and to seek them out in that process, because often the power imbalance will prevent people coming, especially if there's cultural pieces in the mix too, to come back and say, actually, I don't know if I do agree with you, or I do have this question. So it's really, really interesting to think about the unspoken dynamics of how power is played out. So good.
I remember I was in India, when I was in India teaching, and okay, I had gray hair, I am over 50, and I can speak English. So, and I was not really aware that some of those points actually gave me power. And then even when I was asking questions, when I was teaching there, I was not really having the outcome that I was expecting. So, and that's when I was talking to someone, and then someone was explaining to me, like, you coming from England. So then for them, for the group that I was teaching, I am rich. So that was already this understanding. So therefore I have power because I have money. No, I don't. But anyway, so that was the first thing. Second, like I was coming from England, I could speak English. So that, and I was teaching in English. So that was another point that was giving me power in this process. And then I was over 50, which gave me another power because I had experienced my age. On top of that, I come from a position where I come from, because I was one of the leaders on the base where I was coming from. So then all of those things actually was really straight away. So that was a barrier in class to really be able to interact genuinely with the students. So I really had to, think about it. How can I just overcome this barrier in a way that they will be able to be free to communicate? So that was one of my experiences in that aspect.
Yeah, I think, Damares, to sort of follow on with that, I think as leaders, we need to know what power we actually have, or how people perceive our power. And when I've really thought about it, the amount of power I have is quite frightening. And I think it is a huge responsibility. And I think I have power over people in a way that I really don't want, but I have to recognise I have it. And some of those things are visas. As a base leader, I choose who gets that visa. And if people are not meeting it, I could say, you're not meeting our requirements, and they lose that visa. And that is a lot of power to have over a person. I'm also their landlord. If they live on a YWAM base, I set how much they contribute. I choose or part of a team where they live. And if I have several applications for us, I or somebody who's accountable to me chooses what accommodation that person lives in. And, if it's not working out for them in YWAM, that is a huge thing for a person. If they have a family, their kids are in school, they live here, and I'm saying, well, it's just not working out, and they've resettled from another country, they've got all their kids in school, it's a huge responsibility to be responsible for visas, homes, and someone's life is in my hands. I don't choose to have that power, but I've got it. And I think that when people look at you, it takes away some of the freedom, because ultimately I know that I have that, and therefore I have to be very careful And you can be very controlling with that, or you can say it's an awesome responsibility that I'm not going to wield over somebody, but to take it with care and with responsibility. And I think, yeah, and I don't think everybody realizes that when you become a leader or a base leader or any leadership, those things are important to somebody. You hold a lot of things that you don't realize for a person. And it's a big responsibility. And you can abuse that power hugely.
Yeah. Even unaware. Steve, how it is for you in Budapest in terms of being an American, and is that any problem or any difficult for you there?
Well, yeah, I think
that aspect,
I can relate to some of the things that you're mentioning already, and all these different levels on which, you know, one builds on another, and where the influence and the power can be perceived, you know, by being, you know, a certain age group, being a white American, being tall, speaking in English, you know, being educated. And so, so yeah, and you don't realize, like Rob was saying, you don't realize often how much the people are perceiving you, or how they're perceiving you. You don't want to necessarily be perceived that way, but I think too, it's a matter of the heart. And I think because there may be a part of us, or maybe a certain season in life, or where we want that power, we want that admiration, or we want people to look up to us.
Yes.
Or and so in some way there may be intentional, whether we realize it or not. And then other times it could be, or for another person, or for a different season, it could be unintentional, but it's still there, you know? And so I think it puts a large responsibility on us to really, I think two things, just to ask the Lord to, you know, to show us our hearts, and to really help us to see ourselves and to see our motivations, because we're so easy we're so good at blocking those, or not being aware of what's really going on the deep level of inside our own hearts. But the other thing is just being like, one of the things that have been prevalent in some of the different resources is just being accountable and being able to welcome questions from other people and being in community. So those things are so helpful, because other people can help reflect how I may come across, you know, in a group setting. My wife is one of those people who can help me.
We wives always do that.
Yeah.
So good, so good. The thing that strikes me listening to all of you is just the importance of growing in our self-awareness as leaders, right? Like our self-awareness of our cultural backgrounds, our self-awareness of the natural, the kind of factors that play into decision making, into relationships, the both ones that are really obvious and subtle ones of the heart. That and I think it's interesting because we've talked at the moment about power and control in the negative sense of those things, and how they can play into our leadership decisions. But I think I love the title of the one video that Elaine did, Can the Fear of Control Make Us into Wimpy Leaders? And I think that self-awareness plays into this as well, right? Because actually, this is such a hot topic in Christian ministry today around abuse of power. And I know someone in one of the videos said, we are really vulnerable in YWAM, that this is an open door for us. It could be very easy for us to abuse the power at play in our hands. Like Rob said, you have lots of power, whether you like it or not. And so I think I'd love us to talk a little bit about the other side of this coin in self-awareness of our fear of being controlling or overplaying our power, and how that can actually shoot us in the other direction, which is also not helpful. So yeah, thoughts around this area of fear of control make us into wimpy leaders. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think first, power is not something we can choose. it's always something that will be there, whether we like it or not. And I think it's been, it's a challenge always, because I think this is one of my main difficulties, is that I'm always afraid to control. And my fear sometimes actually, it stops me to lead sometimes to the right directions. Do you understand? So because I'm afraid to control, I ended up giving too much space. By giving too much space, then you make people feel orphans also, with no leadership in a way. So I can relate with that sometimes, many times, when I ended up kind of stepping down, stepping back.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Steve?
Yeah, like I've been kind of on the receiving end of leaders who seemed afraid to lead, and that's been hard. I've had in my years of life in ministry and in YWAM, I've had opportunity and privilege to see some really great leadership and to be taught by some really amazing leaders. And I've also been in situations where the leadership hasn't been there in YWAM, and for different reasons. Like in one particular, leader was so gifted in certain ways, but then just lacking in other ways. So an amazing leader, someone who I think is one of the best leaders I've ever worked for, but yet afraid of confrontation, and not willing to make hard decisions, and things just drawing on and on and on, and that creating a frustration. And now I think it can boil down to insecurity, and so we're talking about being afraid of powers, how that can make us into wimpy leaders. And I think there's something there. I guess there's different reasons why that can happen, or what can be underneath. But that was it's difficult to be under a leader who's not willing to make decisions and not willing to use what authority they have for whatever reason. And and there were times just working in Central Europe in the early days, we called it the Balkans back then, but it just seemed, it was kind of the Wild West. There was very little structure, and people just kind of moving in and claiming places and starting up ministry, starting up bases or DTSs. And so we saw there just some difficulty where there were conflicts, among staff and among people that were so hurtful, and really required someone to step in to hear both sides and to be able to help move them toward a solution. And that just wasn't there. And I don't know exactly the reasons, because I don't know what was really going on in the mind and the heart of the leaders who could have made a difference. But I think that it left an impact on me, and it made me think, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that kind of leader. I don't want to be afraid to make decisions. I don't want to be afraid to make a hard decision. And so, so I've just had to navigate that. And I'm trying to find the balance, of using that authority to serve people in a way of making decisions, because that, creating those boundaries or saying no sometimes, at the same time, trying to discern, wow, am I just using my authority or power because it's the easy thing to do, because I can just make that decision and don't have to deal with it, So anyway, so that's
really good.
Some of where I come from.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's finding the balance between direction and authority. Direction and control. Bring direction and bring guidelines, but not control. I think that's kind of the balance of understanding those things.
I'll probably say something a bit different. It probably might sound wrong at first, but I think I've given up caring anymore. I don't care if people think I'm with it. I don't care. I'm 57 years old. I've been in my way 30 years. A lot of people know me. They either like me or not very keen on me, and I'm not really bothered which way it is anymore, to be honest. I think it's 5 years. 20 years ago, I led YWAM Derby for 3 or 4 years, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great experience for me. And then 15 years later, the work had really come to a standstill, a very complicated story. And there was all different ideas of people leading it. And I was going to lead it with somebody, and then another base was going to lead it with me. And in the end, none of these things were working out. And here I am in this big house of 32 rooms and a garden that looks like a jungle. And I've got some money in the bank and a building and nobody to work with me. And I think, well, why am I here? I've been here, I've done this. I really don't want to be here. And here I am because I've got guests coming. I've got this house looking like a tip. And I get up at 5 in the morning to try and clean it and stick my hand down the toilet because it had blocked, thinking, why am I here? And it was freezing cold. I couldn't get the heating to get on. And thinking, why am I doing this? Why have I taken this on at this time in my life? And the Lord said to me, in 2 months' time, after Christmas, and it was beginning of December, and I thought, after Christmas, I've got to go to America for something. He said, when you come back, very clear, when you come back, the people will come. And I went to America, and the week after I come back, I visited somewhere, and 5 people from that place I visited are now with me. And sometimes the Lord leads you. And I realised that not everybody can work with me. And I think we have to come to that. Not everybody can work with us. We lead in certain ways, I lead in a certain way. And I'm a bit of a ball in a china shop sometimes, and not everybody can handle all these things happening. But I need people with me that can argue with me, that are not yes men. I can't take yes men and yes women. I want people that will stand up to me. And I'm very fortunate that I found those people. They will stand up to me and we can lead it together. And I very clear, I want young people. You know, what's on the tin is what it should be. We're not middle-aged people with a mission or old people with a mission, we're youth with a mission. And we've got to go out and find young people who want to lead. And we've got to be serious about this. And I don't think everybody is. I know I see some young people with titles of this and they're leading that and they're responsible for nothing. They've got to ask for this and ask from that. They're out somewhere on mission and they're ringing up asking permission. And I'm thinking, I thought you were the leader. If we've got young people, they need to be given responsibility. And you know what? They're going to be told, if you mess it up, you take the blame. It's your fault, but I will stand with you. And I say that to my young leaders. You can have a go, but if you trip up, you've got to get out of it, but I'll hold your hand, we'll get out of it together. But you've got to take responsibility. And I think if we don't give young people the reality that, yes, you probably will mess it up. Yes, you will make mistakes, but I'm your safety net. Ultimately, the buck probably does stop with me and I'm okay with that, but you're going to help me sort out the mess.
Yeah.
Are you saying that we are probably not giving enough space for young people to make mistakes?
No, we're not doing it at all. We're not doing it at all.
Because that's what I think. That's why I think sometimes we don't. I think we are not giving space for young people to make mistakes in a safe environment. And I feel like we need.
Yeah, we're getting too many young people from middle-class backgrounds who are highly educated, who want to read too many books and know how to do things in and out and take no responsibility for it and actually not work very hard at the same time. And then want the leader to take the responsibility for it. I won't have any of that. No. You want to come and lead with me, you will lead. I've got a young man now who's 23 and I'm making him my property manager. He's going around with another national leader looking at the building. I'm doing this and he's taking responsibility for the building. Ultimately, if it all goes wrong, it's my fault. But he's gonna look after it. Ultimately, he's a very skilled carpenter and got lots of great skills, and knows more than me. But I've got to give him a chance to take that job on and have real responsibility. But as leaders, the buck will always stop with me, and I accept that. But the young person or the people have to be responsible and take some of the pain. No pain, no gain.
It's good, Rob. It's good. You preach it. I think it's interesting actually, because we're ultimate. If you think about it in any dimension and the extreme, right? If we talk about the abuse of power and controlling all the time, or we talk about a place where a leader is being a bit wimpy and not making hard decisions and setting boundaries and speaking truthfully to young leaders about the reality. If you mess up here, this is what's going to happen, but I'm going to walk with you. We're ultimately talking about creating safe places for people to lead, not in a way that they have no responsibility or we helicopter over them, but ultimately either extreme, either being not confident or fearing control or being too controlling, we actually stop their growth. And I think it's interesting to think about how we cultivate environments of growth, especially for a generation that's coming in actually from a parenting model that's been about helicopter parenting. So we've got young people coming in who've had helicopter parents, and they've not, they want it to be easy many times. Like they're not used to the truthful kind of like, oh my gosh, this is all going to go wrong and I'm going to have to rise to the challenge. But ultimately, how do we create those environments of vulnerability, of trust? I think there's a lot what you're talking about, Rob. It's also not doing the other extreme, but it's that tension of both bringing direction and allowing people to take on responsibility and all of those things. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think I do.
Maybe.
I think I do. I think when I get back to one of the things that stood out in what we read and looked at, it was something from Gary McKinley. Remember, you can have control or you can have growth, but you can't have both. And that stood out to me, and that's probably one of the things about what I like. And that's what I sort of say to young people. You know, you can control a lot of people, but you control somebody, they're only going to do as much as you want them to do. But if you want to get the best out of them, then you'll get more. You will always get more out of trying to tap into the natural gifts and what is in somebody's heart. And if you can infuse somebody and encourage them and get them to learn from you, I think it's huge. I think, you know, we've got huge amount of young people that come through our hands, and we have to try and get them to take responsibility. You know, I've got an assistant leader. He was 22 when I took him on, and people didn't think I would get on with him because he wanted to organise me. You can organise me as much as you want, but it's not going to happen. And I said, I want you to organise me, but it's going to be a hard job. But he's a great guy. And, you know, we talk about the things we need to do, and he's rung up and got this quote, got that, and he's taking real responsibility. And I think, to me, that is what young people need. They need to take responsibility. You know, I just seem to be training course after training course, a lot of information and a lot of books read, but not actually any real experience, not actually owning something. And when you own something, it's yours. And if you get it off the ground, you've achieved something. Yeah, you're going to be very disappointed if it all goes wrong, but you've got to learn from your disappointment. I've learned all from my disappointments because I've got a bit of get up and go. I've fallen down many times. Perhaps it's because of who I am that I don't care what people say to me half the time. You know, I've been called a lot of things in my life, and I don't think I'll hear anything new. But, you know, and I say that, you know, somebody's not going to like you here. Somebody's going to criticize you and somebody's going to say boo to you. Have the courage of your convictions to listen to what they're saying. But go ahead, have a go. And if you fall down and someone criticizes you, well, get up and do it again and prove to them that you can do this.
Yeah.
Have a bit of backbone here.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure and, you know, to mostly work with people who are very, you know, have taken responsibility. It's been really, really a blessing. And there's been you know, certain times where that hasn't happened. But another thing I found too is just trying to discern the line when they goof up or when they make a mistake of not only just standing with them, but even sometimes as the leader taking the blame, being willing. Now, if they're not willing to take responsibility, that's one thing. But if they're trying their best, I mean, sometimes if they really mess something up and another third party is really upset, you know, I have a decision to make sometime. Am I just going to am I going to withdraw and let them suffer, you know, the wrath and suffer all that? Or sometimes in just in a loving way of trying to serve my team member, my leader who's messed up, you know, I can say, you know, we did that, we messed up, or I did, you know, it's my fault. And I mean, I know that they messed up, they know that they messed up, but sometimes, you know, so I don't know, just, you know, maybe there's a time for letting them sink or swim and then having to swim to shore by themselves, and other times to be willing for me to look bad and take some blame, even though it was their fault, you know, or they messed it up.
I think Gary, I agree with that, but there's got to be a place where I'm quite happy to say the buck stops with me. I'm quite happy to take responsibility and say it was me, but that person has to stand next to me. And if you don't, because it's not honoring to them, or they've got to be with me. I will take part of it, but we made that together. I let you do it. I take the blame with you. But if they don't feel the pain and don't realize that there's a cost here, I think it's a disservice. I've learned far more by falling down and hurting myself and having to get up and think, I don't like that. I really want to make this happen. I learned more.
I feel that one of the things that I miss, especially being here in Europe, is that's a feeling. I'm not saying this is reality, but that is a lot of protection, you know, so that is not a lot of space to take risks, take risks. So, and I think that is one of the reasons why growth doesn't happen so, you know, as faster as should be. I think about myself. I went to do my DTS in the middle of Amazon. So, you know, I took so much risks. I mean, when I was 20, 21, 22 years old. And even now, not so long ago, I took a team from St. Albans, you know, middle class children, teenagers, actually, not the teenagers, from 14 to 16 years old to Brazil to work in the middle of community where the drug lords were the ones leading this place, where they saw people with the gun machines going everywhere. And they had and I could not sleep because I was afraid of, oh my goodness, what I'm doing here with this team. But actually, they had an amazing experience, and because they were there taking risks. So sometimes I feel we are not offering anymore in YWAM because of, you know, restrictions, because of the law, whatever. But we are not giving a lot of space for our young people to take risks. I have a son who just came back from DTS now. So, and one of the things that made him grow was the fact that he had space to take risks, and risks of even doing things that I did not agree personally as a mother. But anyway, you know, that I was a little bit like cautious, like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen here? But I think, now he just came back about a week ago, I can see the growth that happened within him. just because of space to take risks. And then he's taken another risk now because he decided to go back to Norway to work with the sender there for another year, which for me was he was ready to go to university and now he's giving up everything and then he's going back. But that's exactly what I did when I was 21. But I think that's the thing. I find myself sometimes creating too much protection, and with the power that I carry, because of the position that I carry, that ended up not giving space for risks to be taken. And therefore, then the growth ended up being slowed, or if it doesn't happen because of that. So that's one of my feelings around this whole aspect of growth. There is not enough space to take risks.
Yeah. It really feeds into this whole kind of development bias that Steve was talking about, and how we create, how we multiply, not just bring people next to us, but we actually multiply leaders. And I think it's a tension, isn't it? You suddenly in this conversation, you can feel that there is a tension in how we multiply leaders, in that place of we give them risks. We need them they need to fail. We all need to fail in order to grow, but you don't want people to fail so that then they like splatter on the floor and can't get up again. And so there's always this tension in growth, in moving forward, in momentum. And it just makes me think about what Steve was talking about in his article about the tenfold multiplication. And I mean, that challenged me to think, not just multiply myself, but how do I multiply myself tenfold? I don't know if you have thoughts on what Steve wrote, or just coming on from this kind of how we develop leaders. Steve,
I think I would have a question for, I don't know, for Steve, when he said that, I think was when I don't recruit staff, I recruit leaders, right? I think when was that said? I was trying to understand that. It's just kind of, because one of my background is this kind of churches and even YWAM bases who thinks everybody is a leader. So, and therefore I have to, everybody has to develop some kind of leadership. And I found out people actually being very broke because of that. So I would like to understand a little bit what that means in this whole aspect of multiplication, when I recruit, leaders, not staff.
Yeah. I don't know if Steve Mayers is watching or not. He might be able to give you a little bit more understanding in the comments, but Rob or Steve have thoughts?
Oh, where he is.
Hey, no, I'm here.
Steve is here. So joining the panel.
Yeah, I think what I mean by that is it's how you approach somebody. And you can look at somebody with a student hat on, and so you treat them as a student rather than somebody who has the potential for doing great things. And it's going back to what Rob was saying, really, about giving responsibility. And so you're seeing them as leaders, you're relating to them as who they can become rather than who they are right now. So, and I think that's what Jesus did with the disciples. He saw them as apostles. He saw them as apostolic people that were going to change the world. And I think we need to do the same. But I take your point as well, that we can push people too hard and they can be hurt through it. Obviously, I don't want to do that.
So it's more like leaders being someone that influence others, and how can I just help this person to become the best of who they can become in order to influence others, not necessarily to have a leadership role.
I think if you've taken a step into YWAM and have joined staff, often there's some ambition there, and you can probably lead something. I think everybody on staff has an element of leadership that they can take up. So, I want to push them into that as much as I can.
I think that the key here is not trying to push people round holes into square pegs. It's about finding out who that person is and what are their passions. And, you know, if you find out a person's passion and you put them into that, I think they can find leadership in that. There's no point in saying to somebody who feels they've got ministry to older people, lead a kids club, because it's probably going to go terribly wrong. But if you said, oh, you know, we have several places here for older people, and you've got a passion to care for old people, well, let's find a place. And someone did. A young man said to me, I really want, I said, oh, I know that group there, and I'll get you connected with it. And he loves it. But, you know, and that, it's finding out what, I think sometimes we have all these jobs we want to do on the base, and we're desperate to get people in these jobs instead of trying to find out what people's passions are and getting them to do that. And that's how I think, like Steve's saying, you find their leadership. If you're passionate about something and you enjoy what you're doing and you want to do it, your leadership will probably come out of it.
Yeah, it's good. Any other thoughts from anyone else?
I don't know if I agree. I always think that people sometimes they come to serve systems, not necessarily to lead. And I think that's my difficult when I hear those things, because I always trying to find and to walk with people. And I've been finding people who have been thrown in leadership position, as Rob said. And when in reality, the best that this person could be is to serve in different ministry and in operationally, or even being just a second, like walking side by side by next to a person, but not necessarily leading. And I that's my experience, at least, walking with different people over the years, with different people and working with different people. Even in Brazil, when I worked with street kids, and that is even in the street kids culture, that is a lot of this. So some of them are leaders, others are followers. And then, so I think it's just kind of differentiate between leaders and followers. And I think that is a beauty in being a follower as much as a beauty in being a leader. So that's why for me, maybe it's just how I understand about that. But for me, it's just, I would like to see the person fulfilling their calling, sometimes even if it is to walk side by a person, but not necessarily leading anything. Do you know? And that's I see that happening in times. I have people walking with me like this, just side by side with me, and just saying, I'm not a leader. I am a person who we're gonna walk, and I'm here to serve. And that they've been walking for years like this, and actually left in a very good place. And others who were not leaders and decided to be in a leader position and became. So I think that's kind of how, for me, that's one of the things. When Rob said that, like, maybe everybody eventually can become a leader, I'm not sure if I agree with that.
I think there's probably,
go ahead.
within all of us, I think in most people, there's a little bit of leader, there's a little bit of follower, you know, so we're not just one or the other. And some are very strong leaders. Hopefully those strong leaders can follow as well. But absolutely, I think that I agree that it's important not to push people who really, they're not at that time and place in life, or they're not, it's going to push them over the edge, and to be sensitive to that. But I think that maybe one way I could see it is, you know, striking the, playing a chord on a guitar or something, and anything that's of that same resonant frequency is going to begin to vibrate. And so as you're wanting to developing a bias toward leadership, I think you can wave that over the people gently, not with expectation, but, you know, you begin to feel who's this going to resonate with, and they begin to respond. And when you see that response, then you can, you know, take the next step with them. And maybe for some person, it's a big deal just to lead an intercession time in a group setting, you know, and that's great. And that can be developed. And other people, you know, they're ready to start a new ministry and move forward. So maybe just being able to allow people to be who they are from wherever they are, develop them to the next step, and
yes,
just, you know, finding that place where they're at.
I think it's
where we could all find agreement, Damares, is we want to bring out the best in the people that we have with us.
Yes.
And perhaps if I put it a different way, if someone's more of a follower, you want them to be the best follower they can be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if the best servant you can be, and the best leader they can be.
Yeah.
So I would probably put it, everybody, we owe it to everybody with us to bring out the best in them.
Yeah. I think I was about to say, I think it's often this discussion comes up, and I think it often boils back to what we put definitions around a leader, and we use the word leader in lots of different ways. And I think every one of us is a leader of ourselves, right? We all have to learn how to lead ourselves, which is taking time to reflect on what we are passionate about and where we are supposed to serve, whether that means serving as a leader of a ministry or serving as a leader, as being the best follower of another leader's ministry. Or so I think we have, we want to cultivate environments where everybody is learning to lead themselves to a place of becoming more servant-like, more Christ-like, more aware, self-aware, because we were talked about how self-awareness is a really crucial part of this whole topic around, you know, power and control, and how all of that leads into creating environments that produce growth, and not just growth one by one, but multiplication. And I think we all desire places where that happens, because that is why we're in Youth with a Mission, is that we would see multiplication of young people go into the nations and leading themselves in those places to lead others to be like Jesus. Amen. I was like, so I think it's been a good conversation this afternoon, and I really appreciate all of you. I appreciate all of your honesty. I love it when we don't 100% agree and we're wrestling with the topic, because that is the reality of leadership and communities with lots of different cultures. So yeah, I just want to say thank you for bringing your stories, your perspectives, and I trust that this is really just resourceful conversation for others that tune in and listen. So thank you. For those of you, just as we draw to an end, just a reminder, this is our last drop-in in June, because through July and August we're taking a little different rhythm here at the ELLC. So you have to look forward to getting to watch some devotionals around the topic of recharging. So they will be coming out through July and August, and then we will resume our normal pattern of drop-ins and all the resources and everything in September. And I think in September the topic we're looking at is around the pitfall and how sex plays into the and that whole topic. So that's going to be an exciting one that you don't want to miss.
Yeah.
So anyway, we are right here at 3 o'clock. Look at that, we are finishing on the hour. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks very much. See you all.